I was going to ask you a different question, but that brought up another one in my head where I feel like with a lot of black sports writers that, I mean, that must be frustrating too. It's like people in the comments always go, oh, he's talking about race again. I've seen it for black sports writers, even who don't talk about race. Like it's the one time they talked about it, and that's the immediate reaction. Is that almost an obstacle to try to get readers engaged in the first place because they just want to reject it out of hand and kind of, put their hands up to their ears and not think about it?
Well, you got to pick your spots. At least for me, strategically, it's always been a matter of picking my spots. So if the only thing there is to say is, "Hey, this is racism," then you kind of got to leave it alone. At least as far as I can tell, because that kind of thing people will tune out. But strategically, you figure out there are ways to do this. Like I never had a problem on the Morning Jones. I had some problems when I did the local show, but I didn't have a problem with people when I was talking about race and those issues. And I found that we were able to have substantive conversation on it. So I don't worry as much about people putting their hands over their ears, because the reality is the people that were going to put their hands over their ears if somebody was going to talk about race, well, chances are I wasn't going to be able to really affect any change over them in order to make something happen. Like that, their minds weren't going to be changed anyway. If you have a problem with hearing about race, chances are you have a problem, period. That's what it's already started as. So for me, it's not a concern. I'd like to think personally that I'm good at it and therefore I can find a way to engineer these things. But I really think by and large that if you're worried that white people are going to put their hands over their ears when you talk about race and that's an obstacle, then you don't recognize people are going to get mad at something you talk about all the time. What you then need to do is figure out how to discuss race in such a nuanced way that forces people to kind of reevaluate what they've been thinking and go into it without the defenses up. And as much as I think people would like to be like, you know what, I'm gonna hit you dead in the face with this opposition to racism. No, 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 no. That's not gonna really work. I once watched Dick Gregory. It's like a professional, life-changing sort of moment. I saw Dick Gregory speak at a school in California. I guess this is 2003. And Dick Gregory is the best public speaker that I've ever seen in my life. And the thing with Dick Gregory was, Dick Gregory figured out how to come into this room. They probably paid him something like $20,000 or whatever it is to come give this talk. And you got a lot of highfalutin black people, but there's still a lot of white people because that was the demographic of the school. And what Dick Gregory has is jokes. So Dick Gregory can get out there and tell those jokes and then get into what he's got to say and then hit harder and then hit harder and then hit harder. And he would look and he would see people start getting uncomfortable in their chairs. And then when they get uncomfortable in their chairs, he'd tell a joke, they sit back, and he'd go right back to hitting them in the body with them. And then when they got uncomfortable, he'd tell a joke and they got back. So you can just decide, well, I'm going to talk about this and I'm going to make people listen. Well, people don't have to listen to you if they don't want to. Strategically, if you decide that this is the route that you're going to take, maybe you need to take humor. Maybe you need to go straight over the head with it. Maybe you just need to come up with some nuanced, detailed understanding of how these things go. But if you are going to talk about race, you have to remember that you write for an audience as much as anything else. And you can write about race for people who already agree with you, but you're not going to do anything. You can write about race for people who don't agree with you, but that's a dangerous game. Overall, I've always felt as though if you write something that is engaging, regardless of the topic, people will join in on it. But your writing has to be engaging the same way it has to be engaging on any other topic. Like it's no different than talking about defensive players getting flagged too much for roughing the passer. Yo, that topic's not new. You have to be creative to find a way to discuss it. Race is no different.
I'll ask one last question in this race fest, and I almost apologize for focusing so much on this one issue because you do so many things, and there are a lot of different facets to what you do in broadcasting. But this is just so interesting that I figured that we'd roll with it. You're in a really NCAA basketball heavy market over there, and I'm wondering, how do you feel about the current situation with the NCAA? It really seems to be coming apart at the seams, and do you believe that amateurism is more highly valued or protected because the players are black?
I wonder about that. The part that gets me about this is there's so much resentment from people about why they think players shouldn't get paid. Like what it's not, the money's not coming out of anybody's pocket, but you wind up saying such a great deal of resentment. Well, I had to pay to go to college. Well, you should have got good at something. Right? That's always my thing about it. If you had to pay to go to college, you should have learned to play the cello. You should have been working on that math. You should have been doing something so you don't have to pay to go to college. I didn't play ball and I didn't have to pay to go to college. I went did two post undergrad degrees. I didn't have to pay for any of those. Maybe you should have gotten good at something. It's somewhat difficult because it's hard for me to ignore the fact that people seem happier seeing these black guys broke. There's no denying that. People will rally in all these ways to come up with justifications on why they don't need to get paid, why they're getting an education that so many of them are not qualified to take advantage of, why that's better. They'll come up with all these reasons, and it's kind of hard to avoid the racism element, but it's somewhat difficult to go to it. Now, here's the thing I will say, though, as it relates to the NCAA. The NCAA has done everything it can to make players powerless. Part of the reason why scholarship agreements are 1 year rather than 4 is so that players cannot organize. If you have a 1 year agreement with the school, then they can drop you at any point. If you got 4, they got a more difficult situation. So, you have those sorts of things that come up. They are absolutely powerless. They have absolutely no rights. We have seen story after story go on about how the NCAA in one form or another has abused these guys. They got them scared to death of lying to them in these investigations because if they get caught lying, they're going to catch the Des Bryant and not be able to play. You wind up with a situation like Robert Quinn, who went in to meet with NCAA investigators with a lawyer provided to him by the University of North Carolina, and the investigator was acting like a girlfriend and was like, "Well, let me see your phone." And Quinn looks at the lawyer, and the lawyer says, "Give him your phone." They turn over the phone, and that's how they wind up catching him up. Hell no, I'm not giving you my phone. But you got a lawyer that's there representing the interests of the institution that supposedly is the guy that has your back. Now, all of us on a certain level of common sense understand that this stuff is wrong. All of us understand the idea of working and not getting paid is wrong. All of us understand that these guys do not even have enough time to get this education that they're supposedly being paid for. It's right there. It's obvious. Like, I don't even waste my time hitting people with logic about it anymore because they understand what the situation happens to be. Yet and still, people still ride along with it. I just can't think of a single situation where young white people have been mistreated as college athletes are mistreated and people act like it's okay. I've just never seen it before. So the black part, it's hard for me to divorce it from being part of it. It's difficult because there's no way to really quantify and find out exactly what it is or what the factors are, and really break it down. But when has there ever been a time that you've heard somebody advocate for white guys working and not getting paid?
Well, we are sadly out of time. Bomani, I want to know when you are going to become a professor. When is this going to be taught in classrooms?
Well, it's funny. I was working on a PhD program in economics for years, and that didn't work out for me. I've taught a few places. I did TA stuff at Carolina. I taught Intro to Economics at Elon University, and I taught a class at Duke a few years ago called The Black Athlete in America that turned out really, really well. So if anybody wants to pay me to come teach, I have the degrees and all that stuff that will allow me to come make this money. For after all, as things stand presently, I don't have a full-time job.
Hire this man. All right, Bomani, we got to go. Thanks a lot for coming on, and hope we can do it again soon.
Hey, man, and thank you guys for your good work. You need me again, just let me know.
Thanks so
All
much.
right.
Thank you, sir.
All right, no problem.